Your Minnesota Fighting Vikings finished 13-4, wanting some more last season, won the division, and it was a great debut season for General Manager Kwesi Adofo-Mensah and Head Coach Kevin O'Connell. But question is, how do they build upon that? How do they don't settle for good? It's time to be great. So Kwesi, coming from the analytics background, you know what? With all the trades, all the moves, we have to trust them, as well as the draft 2022. Maybe not so much, but hopefully they'll start contributing this year. But we gotta trust Kwesi because he is a guy in charge, and hopefully he's going to be making some moves and finding grooves this offseason to get the Vikings to where they need to be. But we got 10 offseason questions for Kwesi Adofo-Mensah. First up, how many veterans are going to be cut? Now, the Vikings, to a degree, ran it back with a lot of veterans that Rick Spielman had signed to sort of dubious contracts. But this offseason, the Vikings, it's going to be a reckoning. It is. A lot of veterans that have been around this team for a long time, guys like Kendricks, guys like Dalvin, guys like Harrison Thielen, guys like C.J. Ham, guys that have been with this team for a long time. Their future is in jeopardy because the Vikings are currently $21 million over the cap. They need to be under by March 15th. They can easily do that by ridding themselves of a couple of these veteran contracts. But the question is, which guys stay? Which guys are restructured? Which guys take a pay cut? Which guys are cut and brought back on a cheaper deal? Who really knows? But since the Vikings are sticking with the 3-4 under Flores, I would love to see Za'Darius back, maybe on a new deal. Danielle Hunter obviously would want him back, but everyone else sort of up in the air. Harrison probably, but everyone else, we'll see. It's gonna be one of those really awkward off seasons. But since Kwesi doesn't have any ties to these players, like he didn't draft them, he didn't sign them, I think it'll be a little bit easier for him. Next up, number 2. What happens with Danielle? So Danielle had a restructured deal after he came back from a herniated disc in his neck in 2020, and he proved that he was healthy this year, proved that he's still elite, and he's due a $4.9 million base salary, which obviously isn't going to work. So it's a spot where the Vikings have to extend Danielle or trade Danielle, and the question is, Flores stick with the 3-4. It was always an unnatural fit with Danielle as a stand-up outside linebacker. Can Flores find a bit of a hybrid, bit of an elephant role for him, a la what's happened in Pettine's defenses before, where he's a bit of a 5-tech, where he's a bit of a guy who runs the edge, a guy who also rushes the passer, a guy that really a spot that really caters to Danielle's strengths. I think that Flores can do that. I think that Flores is... He's such an open defensive mind that it's not about his scheme. It's about the players and building the scheme and catering to their strengths around the players. So I think that the Vikings would be very stupid if they let Danielle Hunter leave. He's still an elite edge rusher as well as very solid against the run and setting the edge, still in the prime of his career. And he proved he can stay healthy. So, yeah, I would prefer that they extend Danielle. Next up, number 3. Fix the damn defense, right? So Flores coming in, that's a huge get for the Vikings. And now, the whole sticking with the 3-4, what's going to happen up front? Plus, there is going to be a shift up front. What's going to happen with Diesel Dalvin Thompson, who's a free agent? What's going to happen with Patrick Peterson, who's a free agent? Who's going to play the slot? Probably not going to bring Shondon back. You're probably going to get rid of both your off-ball linebackers in Hicks and Kendricks. Can Asamoah and rookie TBD or free agent TBD really step up? What happens with Harrison Phillips? Like, is he going to be on the nose, or is he better off as a 5-tech? There's a lot of questions about what's going to go on with this Vikings defense, but tear it down, rebuild. Like, get rid of the bad contracts, get these young guys the time of day, supplement with some value free agents, and then go from there. Next up, offseason question number 4 for Kwesi. Interior offensive line issues. So, I mean, you got 2 fantastic bookend tackles with Darisaw and O'Neal, but with Garrett Bradbury, a free agent, I say let him walk. Ezra, I'm still questioning him as a left guard. And Ed Ingram, even though he played every single snap, wasn't great, but beefing up the interior offensive line, either in free agency or the draft, letting Chris Cooper coach him up, I think the Vikings could finally get this O-line to where it needs to be. And what's amazing is that the Vikings had a top 5, top 7 offense with a decrepit interior offensive line and the 31st ranked defense, which is still really damn amazing. Question number 5 for Kwesi this offseason. Is cornerback a need or is it not? So the Vikings cornerback situation, Kwesi drafted Booth. He drafted Evans. So obviously they have a little bit more of the time of day. He found Duke. Hopefully he's re-signed. But does he bring back Patrick Peterson, like he did last offseason? Do they keep Cameron Dancer or do they look to trade him? The question is corner really going to be a need? Because every single mock draft has the Vikings taking corner. But if the Vikings bring back Patrick Peterson, even though he's not a perfect fit for what Flores wants to do, if they do bring back Duke Shelley, you're already rolling 5 deep at corner. So we'll see. I mean, I don't necessarily see the Vikings hammering it as a priority, especially since Kwesi did invest so much in capital in Booth and Evans last season, but we shall see. Next up, question number 6 for Kwesi. Extend Justin Jefferson, get it done. Because the price is only going to go up, and keeping Jefferson in purple and keeping him happy should be priority number 1. Give him a 10-year deal. I don't really care. Give him 75% of the Patrick Mahomes deal. Cut and paste. Just go. Do it. Secure him in purple and have that be the crowning jewel of the offseason. Next up, number 7. Extend Kirk Cousins. I know people will be mad at this, but Kirk Cousins has earned an extension. He currently is a lame duck, only signed through 2023. I think a 1-year extension to alleviate some of the cap hits this year does make sense, kicking the can down the road just like they did last offseason. And like I said, Kirk Cousins had the best season of his career last year, 13 wins, got it done, except for around 4th and 8. Question number 8 for Kwesi. Greg Joseph. So I go back and forth in this. So Greg Joseph was absolute nails at times. A handful of game-winning kicks, of course a 61-yarder against the Giants, but he missed 7 field goals, all from 40-plus, and 6 point-afters, which is just inexcusable. And since he played on the RFA tag last year, he could command $3 to $4 million in salary this offseason. Maybe they even use the franchise tag on Greg Joseph. So it's a question is, do you run it back with Joseph? And is DePaula back? And obviously Wright is going to be there, so you do have a nice triumvirate battery there. But do you do that, or do you go fish? Do you bring in a veteran who's cheap? Do you bring in a UDFA? Who knows? Next up, question number 9. Go big or go Moneyball in free agency. Now, the Vikings didn't go like big in free agency last time around. They signed Za'Darius, which is like a medium-ish deal. They signed Harrison Phillips, which is pretty solid. But question is, do they go big this offseason? Do they go after a nose tackle like Daron Payne? Do they go after an elite guard like Isaac Seumalo? Do they go after a wide receiver like Alan Lazard? So they can clear up a lot of cap. Like, they can find money, and Kwesi can certainly go after some of these big-name free agents. But the question is, do they? Like, do they feel like they're 1 or 2 pieces away and then go after it from in that regard, especially on defense? Who knows? Lastly, question number 10 for Kwesi. Trade down in the draft? Question mark. So currently, the Vikings technically the Vikings have 4 draft picks. They're in line for an extra 5th rounder in comp. Do they trade down? They're currently without a 2nd rounder because of the TJ Hawkinson trade. Do they have an opportunity to move down from 23 if the right guy isn't there? But I do think that Kwesi isn't shy about making deals on draft day, including in division. So I think that he's going to be making deals and finding steals, and hopefully these guys will get on the field and aren't as injured as the 2022 class. But that is it. Those are top 10 questions for Kwesi this offseason. Let us know your thoughts and our thoughts in the comment section below. Subscribe for daily Vikings takes. Want to support the work? Put a little something in the Venmo. But till next time, Skol, production value.